The galaxy had known nothing but war for centuries. It had been a time of endless conflict, species clashing, empires rising and falling, and civilizations fighting for dominance. For many, it seemed like the galaxy would never know peace. But then, after a final battle that tore across the stars, it was over. The Great Galactic Council declared peace, and the fighting stopped. The galaxy exhaled, relief spreading across countless worlds. The war that had lasted for so long was finished. The great powers, once bitter enemies, now stood united in their agreement to cease hostilities. For a moment, it felt like the galaxy could finally heal. The peace, however, was more fragile than anyone could have imagined. For a time, there was quiet, a strange calm in the vastness of space. The worlds that had been at war with each other now focused on rebuilding, on rediscovering what they had lost. No one could have predicted that something would break the silence. The peace was too new, too fragile, and far too uncertain. It was then, in the quiet aftermath of the war, that something happened, something no one had expected. A strange signal cut through the calm of space. At first, it was dismissed as an anomaly, a glitch in the system. But when the message repeated, it became clear this was no accident. It wasn't a random signal or a malfunction of any sort. It was a distress call, a call for help. But not just any ordinary distress call. This one carried something different, something strange. It came from a forgotten world, a planet that had been all but erased from the minds of the galactic powers. Earth. The Council, in its great halls filled with representatives from various species, froze when the message reached them. They had long since forgotten about Earth, the once chaotic and war-torn world. It had been a place that many had written off as insignificant, left behind, as the galaxy moved on to bigger and more important matters. Earth had once been a battlefield, a planet torn by wars of its own, and now it was just another distant dot in the vast expanse of the galaxy. But now, Earth was calling out. The message wasn't filled with desperation. It wasn't a cry of fear. No, it was different. This was a statement, not a plea. Humanity is still here, it said, echoing through the galaxy. For the Council, for all the species who thought they had seen the end of conflict, the message sent shockwaves. At first, it was met with laughter. Surely, a species as small and insignificant as humanity had no place in the larger picture of the galaxy. The humans had been defeated long ago, and their world was forgotten. What could they possibly want now? What did they think they could do? But the laughter didn't last long. There was something about the message that stirred curiosity. Perhaps it was the defiance in those few words. Humanity is still here. It wasn't just a message of survival. It was a challenge. A challenge to the galaxy that had left Earth behind. A challenge to the idea that peace had been achieved by the Galactic Council and its most powerful species. Some of the more powerful alien species, once the mightiest in the galaxy, began to feel a stir of unease. How could a species so small, so insignificant in the grand scheme of the galaxy, be so bold? What did they know that the rest of the galaxy didn't? Were they preparing for something? Could humanity still be a threat? The Council was divided. Some laughed and dismissed the message as the ramblings of a desperate species. They were certain that Earth, once defeated and forgotten, had no real power left. What could humanity possibly have left to offer? They were nothing compared to the great galactic empires. But then there were others who felt a sense of urgency, something they couldn't explain. These individuals quietly suggested that the humans might be more than just a faded memory. What if they weren't finished yet? What if Earth had been hiding something, something the galaxy didn't know, something that could change everything? In the midst of these debates, the message from Earth continued to echo in the minds of the Council members. There was a tension in the air, a quiet sense of anticipation. And while the debate continued, a larger question loomed. What would humanity do next? Would they remain silent, retreat into their forgotten world, or would they rise again? The galaxy waited, uncertain of the answer, Yet, sure of one thing, the war that was supposed to be over had only just begun. Humanity was not finished. The Council had made its decisions, but the universe was about to learn a powerful lesson. Humanity had always been underestimated. The real power of Earth was not in its weapons or its armies, but in its spirit, in its resilience, and in its refusal to fade quietly into the night. As the message from Earth resonated across the stars, a single truth became undeniable. Humanity was still here, and it wasn't about to let anyone forget it. The galaxy waited. The response to Earth's unexpected message was far from what anyone had anticipated. Despite the initial laughter and dismissal from many species, something deep within the Council was stirring. They had underestimated Earth, and now they'd realized their mistake. But the question remained, what would humanity do next? What could they do when faced with so many larger and more powerful civilizations? On Earth, a different kind of tension hung in the air. The message had been sent, but who had heard it? Who would respond? And most importantly, what was Earth's answer going to be? As the days passed, the galaxy's powers turned their eyes toward Earth. The distant planet, once on the edge of the galaxy's consciousness, now had all of its attention. While the Council members argued, debated, and laughed behind closed doors, something unexpected was happening on Earth. Humanity had always been underestimated, but what no one realized was that it was precisely this underestimation that had allowed Earth to survive, and in some ways, thrive. The Earth that the galaxy had forgotten was not the same Earth that had sent that bold message. The planet had gone through years of change, a transformation born from hardship, adversity, and above all, an unshakable will to survive. The war had ended, yes, but it wasn't over for humanity. The war was a part of their past, but it had shaped them into something stronger, more united than ever before. Humanity had begun to rebuild. With no one else watching, with no great empires intervening, Earth had turned its attention inward. Where other civilizations had been consumed by their own intergalactic conquests, Earth had quietly cultivated its own resources and technologies. They had rebuilt their forces, their minds, and their systems. The humans had always been quick to adapt, resourceful beyond measure, and relentless in the pursuit of progress. Over the years, they had quietly gathered strength. The message wasn't a cry for help. It wasn't a plea. It was a declaration. Humanity was no longer the small, insignificant species that had once been at the mercy of the galaxy's larger powers. Earth had hidden its true potential, not because it lacked the ability to fight, but because it had chosen to lie dormant, waiting for the right moment. And now, the time had come. On Earth, military leaders, scientists, and engineers worked together in ways never before seen. The planet's military forces, once fragmented and weak, now operated as a single coordinated entity. But it wasn't just about armies or firepower. Earth's true strength lay in its ingenuity, its unyielding spirit, and its ability to turn impossible odds into opportunities. The humans had learned to harness technology in ways that even the greatest minds of the galaxy had never conceived. They had developed weapons, shields, and technologies that made them far more than an afterthought. Humanity's military forces had quietly built vast fleets, carefully hiding them in the depths of the solar system. Under the surface, ships were being upgraded, weapons modified, and defenses strengthened. The message Earth had sent wasn't just a warning to the galaxy. It was a signal to the stars that humanity was ready to show what it was capable of. But even as the human military prepared, the question still remained. Would the galaxy allow them to rise? The alien species who had heard the call, once dismissive and unconcerned, now realized that humanity was no longer the underdog. The species that had once been thought of as primitive and weak had secretly evolved into something much more dangerous. The great powers of the galaxy began to reconsider their position. Had they made a mistake? Should they have taken the message more seriously? Was humanity really the threat they had once believed? Among the galaxy's most powerful species, the fear began to grow. What if humanity's bold message was just the beginning? What if this was a signal of something far larger? What if Earth, once thought to be on the verge of extinction, was about to show them that it was capable of far more than anyone could have imagined? In the Grand Council chambers, the debate raged on. Some still scoffed, calling Earth's actions nothing more than a fluke. Others, however, were starting to see the truth. The humans weren't playing games. They were preparing for something far bigger than anyone had expected. The galaxy had thought the war was over, but humanity was ready to prove that it wasn't. The response from Earth came slowly, but it came with power. Human leaders, once exiled from galactic discussions, now sat at the table with the other powers. Their position had shifted. They were no longer the underdogs. They were an equal, perhaps even a superior force. Humanity's scientific and military leaders had one goal in mind: to show the galaxy that they were a force to be reckoned with, and they were ready to demonstrate it on a scale never before seen. As the galaxy's powers continued to debate, humanity's forces moved in silence, hidden in the far reaches of their solar system. The galaxy had been at peace, yes, but peace meant complacency. The grand empires had become lazy, relying on their size and power. But humanity, small and underestimated, was about to show that it was far from complacent. The great fleets of Earth began to move. The ships, sleek and deadly, slid through space with quiet precision. The message had been sent. The response was in motion. The galaxy would soon realize that the war was far from over, and humanity was ready to take its place in the galaxy as a force that could no longer be ignored. The stakes were rising, and the galaxy was on the edge of its seat, waiting for the next move. Could Earth really change the balance of power? Could humanity, the forgotten species, rise to the occasion and shake the very foundations of the galaxy? The truth was about to be revealed. Humanity was back, and it wasn't just fighting to survive. It was fighting to lead. The war that was supposed to be over was about to start again. And this time, humanity wasn't just fighting for peace. They were fighting for power, for control, and for a place in the galaxy. The galaxy was watching, uncertain and tense. The universe had once believed Earth was weak, insignificant, and left behind in the chaos of galactic politics. But now, humanity was preparing to reveal a power that no one could have predicted. While the galaxy debated, humanity's true strength was being built in the shadows, and the time for action had arrived. The war that was thought to be over, it wasn't over. Humanity had a plan, and it was about to change everything. The cosmic silence was interrupted by a sudden series of strange movements in the human solar system. Long-forgotten space stations, once seen as outdated relics, were coming to life. Weapons of mass destruction, which had been quietly buried deep beneath Earth's surface, began to hum with energy. The secret fleets, carefully hidden in the farthest reaches of space, started their journey. These ships weren't the kind that had once traveled across the galaxy in search of survival. They were now a powerful force to be reckoned with. The galaxy's great powers watched with growing concern as the first of the human fleets exited Earth's atmosphere, gliding toward the stars. These ships were sleek, faster, and more powerful than any the galaxy had ever seen. The question everyone was asking was, how had humanity hidden all this? How had they developed such technology without anyone noticing? Earth's military had always been underestimated. The galaxy had thought them to be weak, backward, and irrelevant. But Earth had used its time in the shadows wisely. The humans had taken the technology from the war that had once almost destroyed their planet and adapted it. They had refined it, improved it, and used it to create an entirely new kind of warfare. The power of human ingenuity had been underestimated. No one could have predicted the extent of their technological leap. The galaxy's intelligence networks scrambled to understand what Earth had done, but it was too late. The first wave of humanity's military force was already en route, and this was just the beginning. On Earth, human leaders had gathered in secret, planning for a moment like this. The galaxy's response to their message had been one of disbelief. But now, humanity was about to make its move, and it would be impossible to ignore. As the ships left Earth's orbit, they set course for the stars. But they weren't heading to any one planet or system. No, these ships were heading to the very heart of the galaxy, where the Great Council had once ruled. Humanity's military might wasn't about to go unnoticed. The moment these fleets arrived, the galaxy would understand the full scale of Earth's power. The ships weren't the only weapon humanity had at its disposal. Earth had developed something even more dangerous. Technology that could manipulate energy on a scale no one had ever dreamed of. These weapons weren't just powerful, they were devastating. They had the ability to disrupt entire planetary systems, wipe out fleets in seconds, and even alter the very fabric of space itself. These weapons, known only to a handful of humanity's top engineers, had been in development for decades. The galaxy had grown complacent, focused on petty squabbles and political games, while humanity had been preparing for something far greater. And now, the time had come to show the universe that Earth was no longer a forgotten planet. Humanity had risen from the ashes of a war-torn past, and it was ready to take its place among the stars. But not everyone was prepared for what was coming. Many in the Galactic Council believed that Earth's new weaponry was a threat they could neutralize. They believed that their superior technology and fleets would easily crush the humans once they made their move. But what they didn't know was that Earth wasn't fighting a battle for survival. It was fighting for dominance. Earth wasn't looking to play by the galaxy's rules. Humanity was about to change the game entirely. Back on Earth, leaders from all walks of life gathered in the newly formed Global Council, an assembly born from the ashes of the war. These leaders, many of them former military generals, scientists, and engineers, knew that the fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders. But they also knew that their fight was about far more than just survival. Humanity had a vision, one that had been hidden for centuries. "Now is our time," one leader said in a private meeting. "We will not be pushed aside. We will not let them laugh at us. We have the power to reshape this galaxy, and we will." The message was clear. Earth was no longer a passive player. Humanity was stepping forward, ready to claim its place as a force that would define the future of the galaxy. And this time, they were bringing all their strength to the table. As the human fleets continued to move toward the galactic core, the first signs of their presence began to make waves. The galaxy's greatest powers, once confident in their dominance, now found themselves questioning their position. Earth had been dismissed for so long, and now they were forced to confront the reality that humanity was a force unlike any other. The peaceful lull that the galaxy had enjoyed for so long began to crack. The political structure of the galaxy started to shift as once allied factions began to take sides. Some saw humanity as a new ally, a powerful force that could help them in future conflicts. Others feared what humanity might become, too powerful, too dangerous to be allowed to exist unchecked. But for humanity, this wasn't about alliances. This wasn't about playing nice. This was about showing the galaxy that Earth had always had a place among the stars. They had been underestimated, ridiculed, and dismissed. But now, they were ready to take their place at the top of the galactic food chain. The suspense continued to build as humanity's fleets neared the core of the galaxy. The galaxy's powers were forced to prepare for an unknown enemy they could no longer ignore. Every move Earth made was calculated, every action executed with precision. But the galaxy's true response was still unclear. Would they accept humanity's rise, or would they attempt to stop it? One thing was certain: humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for power, for control, and for the future. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming next. The galaxy was now on edge. Humanity's fleets were closing in on the core, and the air was thick with tension. On every corner of the galaxy, military strategists and politicians were scrambling to understand the magnitude of what was coming. They had underestimated Earth, thinking it a minor player. But now, humanity was about to show them just how dangerous they could be. The first strike had been planned, and it was about to unfold with the force of a comet crashing into a world. The galaxy would never be the same again. It had been years since anyone could remember the last galactic conflict. The memory of the war that had once torn apart entire civilizations was fading, buried beneath the false peace that had swept across the stars. The galaxy's powerful factions had enjoyed decades of calm, quietly maintaining their dominance. But all of that was about to change. As humanity's fleets neared the heart of the galaxy, the first signs of conflict began to take shape. The leaders of the galactic powers held emergency meetings, trying to formulate a response. But they were too late. The message humanity had sent was clear. They were no longer the weak, isolated species that the galaxy had once dismissed. The galaxy's complacency was about to be shattered by a single devastating act. The first strike came swiftly and without warning. A massive wave of energy erupted from Earth's fleet, a pulse that rippled through space like a shockwave. The energy burst wasn't just a weapon. It was a signal, a declaration of intent. Humanity had arrived, and they weren't interested in playing by the rules anymore. The pulse hit a major galactic powers fleet, disabling their ships with an intensity that stunned everyone. The first strike was a masterstroke, demonstrating not just humanity's power, but their strategic brilliance. The galactic leaders were in a state of panic. Their first instinct was to retaliate, to respond in kind. But humanity's technology had made it impossible for them to track the origin of the energy burst. It was as if Earth's fleet had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only the devastating impact of their strike. The galaxy's most advanced tracking systems couldn't even register the source of the pulse. Humanity had played their cards well. No one could predict what came next. Behind the scenes, Earth's leadership was already planning the next phase of their campaign. They had known that their first strike would shake the galaxy to its core, but they weren't foolish enough to think it would be enough. This was just the beginning. Earth had the resources, the technology, and the will to push forward. The galaxy's complacency had been shattered, and now it was time to reap the rewards. For years, Earth had quietly developed a hidden fleet of ships equipped with weapons far more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. But they weren't just relying on their technology. Humanity's true strength lay in their ingenuity and adaptability. They had learned from their past mistakes and developed a strategy that no one could have predicted. Meanwhile, in the heart of the galaxy, the once untouchable Galactic Council was in disarray. Their members, some of the most powerful beings in the universe, were arguing over how to deal with this new threat. The representative from one of the largest empires stood up, his voice trembling with rage. "This is an act of war," he shouted. "Humanity has crossed the line. We cannot allow them to grow stronger." His words resonated with the council, but there were others who had a different view. The representative from a peaceful alien species spoke calmly, yet with a clear sense of urgency. "Is it war we want?" she asked. "Or is it something else? Humanity may be aggressive, but they are not our enemies, not yet. We need to understand why they are acting this way. We need to communicate." But the hardliners in the council weren't listening. Earth's pulse had already crippled one fleet, and no one could ignore the potential destruction humanity could unleash if they were provoked further. The council was split, and no one knew what the next move would be. Back on Earth, the leaders were watching the chaos unfold. Their plans were progressing according to schedule, but they knew the galaxy wasn't going to back down easily. The human military command was fully aware that the galactic powers would come for them, eventually. But they weren't afraid. They had been preparing for this moment for decades. "Humanity's future is in our hands now," said General Cormac, one of Earth's most respected military strategists. "They think they can crush us, that we're nothing more than a nuisance. But they haven't seen what we can truly do." He turned to the rest of the council. "We strike first. We strike hard. If the galaxy wants to challenge us, we will show them why they should fear us. Our strength lies in our unity. We won't back down." The plan was simple. Humanity would launch a series of coordinated strikes, each one calculated to send a message to the galaxy's powers. The first attack had been a success, but it had only been the beginning. There was more to come, much more. The next few days were filled with uncertainty across the galaxy. Every major power was preparing for retaliation. The war that had been fought over for centuries was about to restart, and this time, it would be unlike any war the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity's next move was not just a strike. It was a statement. The next phase of their campaign was aimed at the core systems of the Galactic Council. They would hit hard, crippling the very heart of the galaxy's power. If Earth could take down the central authority, the galaxy's other powers would be left scattered, divided, and weak. Humanity would take its place at the top, not as a conquered people, but as the galaxy's new rulers. As Earth's fleets prepared for their next strike, the galaxy braced itself. The first pulse had been a shockwave, a signal that humanity was here to stay. The second strike would be the one that changed everything. Humanity's true power was about to be unleashed, and no one could stop it. As the countdown to the second strike began, the tension across the galaxy was palpable. The unknowns were growing. What would humanity do next? How much destruction would they cause? What kind of future did the galaxy face now that the once weak Earth had become a force to be reckoned with? The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the next move in a game that was no longer just about survival. It was about control, power, and the reshaping of the universe itself. And in the shadows, humanity was poised to make the galaxy regret ever underestimating them. The galaxy was on the brink of chaos. For centuries, it had lived in a false peace, one that masked the tensions simmering beneath the surface. But after humanity's unrelenting strikes, things were changing. The Galactic Council, once a symbol of unity, was now fractured. Leaders from across the stars trembled as Earth's power surged. The time for diplomacy had passed. Now, the question was no longer if humanity would win, but how they would reshape the galaxy. As the final, most devastating strike was unleashed, humanity's true purpose came into focus. The galaxy was no longer the same. The power structures that had ruled for millennia were crumbling. The once unchallenged Galactic Council, a collection of the most advanced and influential species, was now nothing more than a shadow of its former self. In the past, the galaxy had been divided into factions, each vying for power, control, and dominance. But with humanity's rise, the balance had shifted in an instant. The final strike, the one that had been planned for years, hit with an intensity that shook the very fabric of the galaxy. The weapon humanity had built, a force that combined advanced technology, ingenuity, and raw determination, was unleashed. It was more than just a weapon. It was a statement. Earth was here to stay, and it wasn't going to bow to the old powers. The galaxy would have to reckon with its new rulers or face total destruction. As the dust settled, the galaxy's most powerful fleets were either disabled or retreating. The Galactic Council's members were scattered across the stars, seeking refuge from the overwhelming power of humanity's assault. No one had anticipated such a rapid and decisive victory. Earth had gone from a forgotten world, ignored and underestimated, to the galaxy's most dominant force. The surviving factions began to recognize the gravity of the situation. They had watched Earth struggle for survival, believing that it was only a matter of time before humanity fell. But the humans had proven them wrong. They had fought with a ferocity and determination that the galaxy's oldest species had never seen before. No one could deny that humanity was the future. In the heart of the galaxy, Earth's representatives stood before the remnants of the Galactic Council. The council chambers, once filled with arrogance and power, now seemed empty, shattered by the very force they had tried to suppress. The humans had come to speak, not as supplicants, but as conquerors. The members of the council, their eyes wide with shock and disbelief, watched as the leader of Earth's fleet stepped forward. He was a man of few words, but his presence spoke volumes. "The galaxy has been changed," he said. The age of complacency is over. Humanity will no longer be silenced. We will forge a new order, one based on strength, unity, and progress. You may not agree with us, but you will respect us. The universe belongs to all who have the will to shape it. The alien leaders, once proud and untouchable, had no choice but to listen. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. Some species wanted to fight back, but they were too scattered, too weak after the devastating blows Earth had dealt. Others, more pragmatic, saw the inevitable and began to shift their allegiance. In the days that followed, the galaxy began to change. Earth's fleets moved into position, controlling key points in space. They were no longer just a defender. They were the new rulers of the stars. Alliances were formed with species that recognized the power of humanity, and resistance groups were crushed with surgical precision. Humanity's influence spread rapidly, and with it came a new era of governance. Earth wasn't interested in ruling with an iron fist. They wanted to create a system where power was shared, but only with those who earned it. Those who had once dismissed humanity now found themselves learning from their strategies, their resilience, and their innovation. But not everyone was willing to accept humanity's new role in the galaxy. There were still factions that resisted, determined to fight until the last star fell. But humanity was ready. Every move, every tactic had been carefully calculated, and Earth's military and political machines were now in perfect harmony. The resistance, though strong, would have to contend with a force far greater than anything they had ever encountered. Humanity had not just survived the war, they had thrived. They had taken the galaxy's greatest challenge and turned it into their greatest triumph. They had proven that they were not just another species to be conquered or forgotten. They were the future.